What's up, guys? Another episode of Break MMA. Officially, I just changed it this morning on YouTube. Officially, Break MMA instead of Smoke Break Podcast. And I've got another repeat guest, a good friend of mine, Ty O'Keefe. As you know, All 5 Rounds podcast as well. Check out that if you haven't. They just did a Christmas episode that was a really good episode.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back, man. I appreciate it. I had a great time the first time we were on, and obviously we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so the last time we talked, it was a couple of days, maybe a couple of days before this whole headline with Jon Jones, and it's a little fuzzy exactly what's happened. It's a little weird. They didn't give us exactly a full explanation, and he's still got a hearing coming up. But the news come out that he tested positive. They said that he tested positive, but it's not anything new. It's the same stuff from his system. When they first said that, did you believe it? And then not only did they say that about Jon Jones, they said we're moving the whole card to Las Vegas or to California.
Yeah, I'm I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you. When I first heard it, before I heard the exact details of everything, I too thought, yeah, okay, Jon Jones obviously did something stupid again, and he's most likely guilty because he's been popped before for this, and he's done some other stuff outside of the octagon. Remember, he had the hit and run New Mexico, drug use, things like that. So, of course, like everybody else, I too thought, yep, for sure. Then you get into the science of it. And unfortunately, that's the path that we've been forced to go down. And I tell you what, man, now that it's out there, a picogram or whatever they want to call it, and however, tiny the amount is, it is scientifically, in my opinion, for what I've heard, and I'm no scientist, I'm no expert, from all the research I've done, I've looked at it, heard everything, it would be scientifically impossible for him to take that tiny amount, meaning that the only way that turinabol could be found in his system in the amount that it was recently found in is if it was left over from trace amounts from the failed test in 2017. Otherwise, we're talking about, from what I heard, taking 1 grain of rice, chopping that grain of rice into 50 million pieces, and the amount that was found in Jones' system is equivalent to one of those 50 million pieces of that grain of rice. That's how small we're talking.
So you basically believe USADA. The USADA says that he didn't do anything wrong, that this is the same old stuff, and Nevada was like, well, we don't really believe you, but we don't really not believe you. We just don't have the time to look over it. They basically wanted some more time to look over it, but of course the UFC and Dana White, we need the fucking fight now. We need the fight to happen now. We don't need the fight to happen a month from now. So they pull this little, let's call California, let's ask California what they think, and they agree to let him fight. You're okay with him fighting. You don't think he used steroids again, and you believe it's the same steroids from before that's just left over, correct?
Absolutely. With what the evidence that I've seen, yeah, absolutely, I do. And that's not to say I'm a supporter or I condone what Jon Jones has done in the past, or that I wasn't like everybody else, bit by this and said, oh man, this is ridiculous. And it makes you dislike him even more if you're already someone who considers Jon Jones a cheater, right? I mean, let's be honest. That's the thing. It's the image, the idea that here we are again with this guy. You know what I mean? And he's a champion and he's undefeated and all that. And here we are again where he screwed up again, or whatever you want to call it. So, when you look at it, I really do think that that's the case. And as much as people might want to pop Jon Jones for this and say, hey, this guy's cheating again, or he's microdosing or whatever, I think people should be more angry if they want to be mad at something that the UFC decided to move the entire card. They screwed over a lot of fighters, families of those fighters. There's members of the media who had to have their plans changed or just simply can't go cover the event now. There's fans who've paid a lot of money to fly into Vegas to watch this fight, and then don't have the money to make those changes midweek. And those are the things that if fight fans want to be pissed off at Jon Jones about something, be mad at that and be mad at the UFC's decision to accommodate Jon Jones at this point to that level, to the point where you're going to, hey, we're done with T-Mobile Arena because Nevada State Athletic Commission didn't have enough time to investigate the matter, as you mentioned. So they're going to move it to the Forum in Inglewood. You want to be mad at Jon Jones? Be mad at that.
I'm personally 100% on the opposite side here. I You can't take away what Jon Jones is. He is the number 1 or number 2 greatest fighter to ever live. Or you could say George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Jon Jones. Those 3. It's one of those 3. And
absolutely.
And so you can't take away what he's done in that octagon. You cannot take away that he is a bad motherfucker with an 84.5-inch reach, deadly submissions, deadly strike. Like he's built for fighting. He's the most perfectly built fighter ever. But let's go back. You said earlier his past. This man has the hit and run. Everybody's had problems. I've been in trouble before. I've never had a hit and run, but I've been in trouble with the law before, just like 100,000 million other Americans have. So you can't hold that against him, but he's had a hit and run. The cocaine, he tested positive for cocaine metabolite. He tested positive after the DC fight. He tested positive before at UFC 200. And just so much shit over and over. I personally, and I've had a few people tweet, and Ariel and Luke talked about it a little bit, or not Ariel, Brendan Schaub and Luke Thomas talked about it a little bit and said that a few smart people that know steroids have reached out to them and said that they believe that he's microdosing, which you know what microdosing is. He's taking a very...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He's taking a very small amount to try to get a small to medium gain. They described it like old baseball players would have these little gummy bears with testosterone in them, and they would eat them the 7th inning. So you would...
Yeah, Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, you would get the benefits in the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th, but by the 10th and the 11th, if they ever popped you with a piss test, you'd be good. But personally, I believe he got popped. Now, some people are like, the dick pills, the dick pill theory, okay. And now you got, before when he tested positive after the DC fight, he said it was the size of a pinch of salt in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And you mentioned the picogram, 50 millionth of the size of a salt, a piece of salt. How does that stay in your system 18 months, for one? And number 2, I don't know if you're familiar with the Frank Mir case, but Frank Mir had the exact same case. He tested positive for 25 picograms of turinabol, I believe, and they suspended Frank Mir 2 years, and Frank Mir went in front of the commission and asked them, is there any way possible that this is in my system from past usage? And they said, no, not possible.
First of all, they did do Frank Mir wrong. They absolutely screwed Frank Mir in the incident you're mentioning, okay, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to this thing with Jon Jones, I think my co-host on All 5 Rounds, Darren Laux, I think he agrees with you. He's very familiar with I'm far more familiar with the science of all this than I am. However, I can only go on what I've seen thus far, right? I mean, I'm not an expert in this field, but I tell you what, when we're faced with something like this, all we can do is judge it based on the evidence that's presented thus far. And from what I've heard, seen, whatever, that's just my opinion. Now, that's not to say that I will be surprised if we find out in a week or a few days or whatever that he did do something different and it was microdosing or whatever. But as of now, as of what evidence is out there and what the experts are saying, I absolutely do think trace amounts of it are left over from the 2017 test. I don't know why. I don't know if you're familiar, but each drug or medication has something called a half-life, which means how long it stays in your system after everything's done. Clearly, to me, from all the experts that have no interest in supporting Jon Jones, we're talking about USADA people, whoever. These people don't have a vested interest in Jon Jones. The UFC does, but not the outside entities. They don't. And so, if they're saying that turinabol has a half-life that can be this long, who am I to dispute that until further notice? You know what I'm saying?
But
until somebody actually proves it to me otherwise, that's where I sit.
But does it really make sense? Like if I told you, like if we're working at McDonald's and we work together for 10 years and then one day all of a sudden I'm fired and I walk up and I tell you, they tested me and I had turinabol in my system, but I took it 18 months ago. Would you believe me? Would you really, it don't sound...
I would say, you know what, man, Hank, no bullshit, Hank, I would say I don't know enough about turinabol to not believe you.
But just by the sound of it.
But that's just the kind of guy I am, though. You know what I mean? Like I'm a pessimist. I'm a negative skeptic, right? So until I see something that tells me otherwise, I stick with it. And again, I'm saying you're right. Jon Jones has done a lot of other stuff, But let's be honest. The reason everybody is so angry about this, and yeah, millions of Canadians, Americans have had run-ins with the law. All right. But let me tell you, man, the reason people are upset, and I'm sure you would agree, is because UFC champions must be held to a higher standard. We expect more from Jon Jones than we expect from the guy down the street, right?
Yes.
He's a champion. He's got a platform. He's got a responsibility, right? And he's out there doing things that he's done in the last few years, and it's lowered that standard. He has not lived up to his title. He's not lived up to all his accomplishments in the octagon, and it pisses people off. It really, especially when the Cormier situation, because let's be honest too, Daniel Cormier is the polar opposite of Jon Jones. He is, if they were two comic book heroes, they couldn't be more perfect for each other. And when Jon Jones robbed Daniel Cormier, or what people think robbed Daniel Cormier because of steroid use or whatever, and Cormier was unable to defeat them, that hatred for Jon Jones just grew. Because people look at Daniel Cormier as someone who represents all that's right with MMA. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you rob, Jon Jones is a cheater, so he robbed Daniel Cormier of his legacy, and all this stuff like that because he couldn't beat him. I think the hatred from there just keeps growing and growing, and you could say anything right now about Jon Jones, and people are going to just eat it up. You know what I mean? MMA fans right now want to hate Jon Jones.
And I agree with you on a lot. I 100% agree with what you said about the hatred for just being mad at Jon. It's different with me and you and like Darren and other people because we cover this shit. We talk about it. We live it. Every day.
Oh yeah, this is life. This is our life.
Every day we're watching fights, breaking down fights, asking fighters if we can talk to them. Just all day long fights. And for me, and I mentioned this in a tweet, I was like, we have two options as me, like people like me and you, MMA. I guess you could say MMA journalists. MMA media, which neither one of us really are, but we'll just say that. We'll say MMA media. We have two options.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm no journalist, but I'll definitely say I'm a member of the MMA media.
We have two options. We can either talk shit about him or straight up just not talk about him. Like, my problem is not with Jon Jones being a fuck up. He has his right to be a fuck up. If Jon Jones is just a fuck up, that's what he is, I'm mad at the UFC for letting him get away with it. Like, if he did steroids and he was microdosing and he knocks out Gustafsson and then a month from now, USADA comes out and says you're suspended for 4 years for your third offense, the UFC is just, it's all falling apart. My problem is, like you said, a lot of people have a problem with Jon. I don't have a problem with Jon. I have a problem with the UFC covering for Jon.
Well, we don't know that they're covering right now, right? I mean, that's the perception a lot of people think. And if it turns out that that's true, then absolutely I could see people, if this turns out that this is more than what the UFC is saying and what USADA and everybody's saying, and it turns out that maybe he is microdosing, and there's proof of that immediately following this fight or shortly thereafter. Oh yeah, people are they're gonna be so angry. And rightfully so. You know what I mean? You cannot blame anybody for being angry about that. I'm just saying right now, let's be honest, this is the number one rematch in the history of the sport, period. And we have been waiting so long for this, man. I'm selfish. I'm a real selfish dude right now. I just want to see this fight happen. And I got to also say, hats off to Alexander Gustafsson for taking this fight still. He was given a chance to take this fight in March on Saturday. They showed it on Embedded, where Dana White said, hey, man, you can cancel this. We can do this in March. And what did Gustafsson say? I don't care if he's on rocket fuel. We're fighting. So hats off to Gus for taking this, you know what I mean, and moving forward with this, with the cloud of doubt hanging over. I mean, that says a lot about his character.
Is it fair to Gus, though? Like, if Jon Jones is microdosing and he does get popped a month from now, will we look back on this interview and say, God damn, I wish Gus would have said no?
Of course, if it turns out that Jones is doing more than what the UFC is claiming, and it turns out that it is microdosing ultimately, of course, we'll all think Gustafsson got screwed, and we'll all start campaigning for a new fight. Because we know that, there's this idea that Gustafsson is kryptonite to Jon Jones. Okay, whether it's right or wrong, people have been hanging on to this hope that Cormier couldn't do it, Anthony Johnson couldn't do it. All these champions and everybody else couldn't do it, but no. That fight 5 years ago, that Gustafsson, he can do it. He's the one who can end this guy. You know what I mean? People have been hanging on to this forever.
So
I think if he actually gets screwed and it turns out that Jones did microdose, oh, man. You imagine the public backlash on Jones if this turns out to be more? Oh, man.
I believe Gus will still win. I think Gus is going to beat him, but I don't think it's going to be easy. You know, it's going to be very, very... You're not beating Jon Jones easy, anybody. Now, you got to ask the question, too, and somebody asked me this. Do you think Jon's been doing this his whole career? Now, I don't know if you follow football, but his two brothers...
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm a huge football fan.
His two brothers are in the NFL, and they've both been popped for steroids. And
Arthur and Chandler.
The number one places to get... If you have money and you want steroids... The number one place to get high-end steroids is NFL. The NFL can get the best. And
you're a Patriots fan too, aren't you?
Hey, let's not talk about cheating in NFL. Let's not talk about that.
Quit hiding. Yeah, you're hiding behind. That's not. You got to be proud to be a Patriots fan. As wrong as it is, you got to be proud.
Hey, they caught us, but I'm a firm believer too. You know, if you get busted, you should just throw your hands up and say you fucking busted me and deflate.
Oh yeah. I'm with you on that. They get you. Just own it, man. Just own it.
The Patriots have been, except for Deflategate. Deflategate, they absolutely denied, basically, but Spygate and all that other shit, they were just like, hey, you caught us.
We don't have that in MMA very often, though, it seems like, you know. Like sometimes we'll get some guys, some men and women come out and say, okay, this is wrong. But we've never really had this level of somebody who's with this kind of, like Jon Jones is above and beyond almost all of the other fighters on the roster other than Conor McGregor, I would say. And I know Conor McGregor just lost the fight, but let's be honest. Who else could you imagine the UFC relocating an entire card for? You know, until this happened, if you would have said to me, name one fighter the UFC would change an entire card to accommodate, I'd say Conor McGregor, and that's it. You know, that's it, period. I never thought that they would do this for Jon to save the main event. Dana White can say all he wants about, oh, we're going to have a fight anyways. If you want to cancel this fight, Gus, we're still going to have a great fight and da-da-da-da-da without the... Yeah, right. Bullshit. They need this fight. You know, they're heading into the new year with a lighter schedule. The ESPN things coming up. They've had to cancel a pay-per-view in January already. They need this. You know what I mean? UFC needs this in terms of fan interest, in terms of pay-per-view buys. Now, I don't think it's going to do the pay-per-view numbers people think it is. I don't think it's going to hit 1 million by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, you know, the UFC needs this fight. And I thought Conor McGregor would be the only person that they would ever move a card for.
And Gustafson's in a weird spot because I watched the Embedded too. If he says no to Dana, like you're gonna say no, you know, you're not.
Yeah, after waiting all these years, yeah, no way.
He would have fought Jon if they were like, okay, Gustafson, your arm's broken. Do you still want to fight Jon Jones? He would still fight Jon Jones.
I think if Jones would have been popped for an actual like full offense where they found crazy stuff in him and it was no doubt, I still think Gustafson would be like, I don't care, I'm fighting.
But yeah,
I really do.
Like I was mentioning about the brothers, they've been popped, and he just has access to steroids. There's no debate to that. He has access.
I gotta admit, I didn't know Arthur and Chandler Jones had been popped for steroids. I didn't know that.
Yeah, both of them have tested positive before. So
that's a shame. That's interesting.
So yeah, that plays into it. You know, he has access to top of the line steroids. So. And so I seen this one interview with Chael Sonnen where Chael Sonnen said that Jon Jones did cocaine. Cocaine can kill you. Like, cocaine can stop your heart. It can kill you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Steroids help you. He's, you know, it's like the steroids that they're taking is to, you know, muscle mass, make you bigger, stronger, faster, meaner. All
they're performance enhancers. Yeah, absolutely, they're performance enhancers. Cocaine is not a performance enhancer.
So to think that he would take something that would kill him, but he would never take something that would help him is crazy.
See, I don't know if I agree with that because there's a lot of athletes, a lot of fighters, whoever, who go out, they decompress, they get in a bar, they get in a situation where they're having some drinks, maybe not around the best people at some times, and I'm nobody judge of that. I'm just saying they put themselves in an environment, all of a sudden, you know, drugs are involved or whatever because they're in the environment, and the athlete is looking to decompress, whether they smoke weed or they want to use coke or drink or whatever. And they do it without really thinking about it. I don't think that people who necessarily engage in that type of behavior using recreational drugs like cocaine or weed or whatever, I don't think it's of the same mindset where they're like, hey, I'll take this shit despite the fact that it could kill me, but no way would I ever take PEDs. I don't think there's a relation there. I really don't. And I mean, you know, I know we don't agree on that, but hey, if we agreed on everything, this would be a boring show too, right? So.
Yeah, but you get what I mean. I'm not saying I get.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I got the highest respect for Chael Sonnen. I mean, that guy, to me, he's one of the greatest guys in MMA media. I could listen to him talk all day. So I totally understand what you're saying. I just don't think that there's that connection. I don't think when people use cocaine or weed or whatever, or any other type of recreational drug, I don't think a lot of people even think about it. I don't think they consider all of those things. I think it's, hey, let's get messed up. I want to decompress, and that's it.
Do you think Jon Jones, and I'm going all the way back to the very first Shogun fight, when he won the belt against Shogun, do you think he's always felt this pressure to be the GOAT, to be the greatest? Let's say that he was clean, and I'm referring back to my earlier question. I personally believe, I'm 60-40 that he was probably using steroids his whole career, and that's just me. And that's close, it's like 60-40, maybe, kind of a 50-50 almost. But if you had to press me, I would bet that he didn't just stumble upon steroids 2 years ago. He's been doing these things for a little while. And that takes, you got to think, was he on him when he beat Shogun? Was he on him when he beat Rampage? Was he on him when he beat Vitor? And Vitor's...
But remember, he was under testing at those points too. So if he would have been, yeah, but still, he was being there was testing being done by other entities, outside entities, whatever. I don't know who. I don't even remember who was doing it before USADA at this point. But he would have been using like heavy masking agents or microdosing or whatever. And I think at this point, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I totally do, man. It's just that I think at this point, it's irrelevant. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they're not going to go back and be able to find out. No one's going to know. You know what I mean? He became the youngest UFC champion. Nobody's going to ever find out if he was clean back then or not. So I say we just move forward and hope that we get the truth moving forward. And maybe, a lot of people who hate Jon Jones, maybe they'll get lucky. Maybe we'll have a new light heavyweight champion that is not Jon Jones on Saturday.
Or maybe when he's 45 and retired, he'll come out and say, "Hey, I did this my whole." You know what I mean? Like,
don't hold your breath on that. I don't know, man. I think he would one of those cats who take it to the grave. His ego, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Back to his ego. Do you get what I'm saying about the pressure? Do you feel like he's always had this pressure to be?
Yeah, but I do, and I think he put that pressure on himself. But also, when you come from a family that also produced 2 NFL football players, let's be honest, okay? Whether they've been nailed for steroids or not, Arthur and Chandler,
they're great
his family.
They're great players.
And that's the thing. But to come from a family with DNA like that, with genetics, to where you can produce 2 NFL football players and a UFC champion out of 3 brothers, there is pressure automatically from day one. These guys were competitive with each other growing up, and I think that environment fostered this type of pressure that Jon Jones put on himself that helped to drive him to become the youngest UFC champion in history. You know what I mean? And there's no way in my mind to come out of a household or out of a family like that where you have such elite athletes and not put pressure on yourself.
Is he the GOAT? Despite the cocaine, we're putting all that into effect. You have to...
Oh, I don't care about the cocaine. I'll tell you straight up. I don't care about the cocaine, none of that crap. I care about stuff that performance enhancing. You know what I mean? Stuff that changed the results in the octagon. Now, is he the greatest of all time? Until further notice, yeah.
And because top 3, like we mentioned, Anderson, GSP, John. It's one of those.
And Anderson's been popped too. Let's not forget, Anderson's been popped too.
GSP's a clean athlete, though.
Yeah, but I never, and this isn't a knock against his legacy or whatever, I just never have been a supporter of his. Towards, however many fights it was, I look at him as a point fighter. He stopped finish. His fights were some of the most boring I ever saw in my life. I got to the point where I didn't even want to see him fight anymore just because it was so boring. And so I do respect what GSP accomplished. But and Craig Allen, my co-host and guy I work with, as you know, Craig, he would be yelling at me right now if he heard me, disrespecting GSP. But no, I think Anderson Silva and Jon Jones would be the undisputed greatest of all time, if not for these problems. So that's what else do we have to go on, right? I mean, maybe it's Cormier, maybe it's Nurmagomedov.
Fedor. Some people throw Fedor in there, but I'm not. Fedor's definitely top 10.
Me neither.
Top 10 for sure, but not top 1.
In my mind, you cannot be considered the GOAT if you never stepped into the UFC octagon.
Same, definitely. But
it's just impossible.
A funny story about Jon Jones, and I told my guest just a couple of days ago about this. I remember I was in 9th grade, 2009, and I had this buddy named Nathan, and he was a amateur fighter. Did a little bit of fighting, and he cut. This was in 2009, and I looked it up. Jon Jones only had like 2 fights in the UFC at this time. He had just beat Stephan Bonner, I believe. And Nathan walks up to me one day and he goes, "Johnny Bones Jones, you know him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's new, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he looked at me and he said, "He will be the greatest fighter to ever live." True story.
Well, I believe it. There were some other people who thought that too. I mean, just because of the the attributes that he brought into his fight game. He had the size, the speed, the reach. He has a high fight IQ. Some of these things were really evident early on with Jon Jones. And also, I just want to say, and I know a lot of people don't consider this true, but the Matt Hamill loss is not a loss. Okay,
No.
He is undefeated in the octagon. Yes, he's got the no contest that was overturned, against Cormier because of steroid offense. I get it. But he's never lost. Never. This guy's just never lost. And until that happens, it's hard to dispute his status.
Yeah, it's crazy though looking back on that. When he told me, he's like, Jon Jones will be the greatest, and he pretty much hit it right on the head. But you can't not talk about the bad. Like if they do a 30 for 30, you know what 30 for 30 is on ESPN.
I live on 30 for 30. So yeah, I'm a huge sports fan outside of MMA. So yeah, I eat those up.
30 for 30 on John 5 years from now. The first opening scene is going to be Dana White telling Daniel Cormier that he tested positive, and then it's going to cut to him in the car drunk, and then it's going to cut to him in jail, and you know what I mean? It's gonna. That's how it starts.
You know what, Hank? I think you are dead right. I think you are absolutely right about that, man.
Because people like tragedy over triumph, always.
Oh yeah, especially this day and age. I don't know why, but our society has turned into this place where it's just hatred, and we want more hatred, and we're going to eat it up. And if you fail, man, we're going to celebrate it. And I hate that. I'm so sick of it. But that's the world we live in today.
So all this being said, the moving, and by the way, I forgot to mention, you were completely right about the fans. I mean, imagine Alexander's fans come from Sweden, and you buy a plane ticket, you buy a hotel, and then they call and it's not there, and you might be able to refund your ticket and rebook a flight, but I don't think a hotel's going to reimburse you. You're gonna lose money. You're gonna lose money no matter what.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, this isn't the busiest traveling week of the year.
Yep, New Year's Eve, everybody's on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is the airports are crazy this week because of all the traveling between Christmas and New Year's. And the only advantage to moving into LA is that city never runs out of hotel rooms, just because, it's got Hollywood and everything else. It's the one city you could move it to this time of year and not, you still have enough accommodations for everybody. But that's not the point. You're right. People are losing money, and people who came from Europe to watch Gustafsson, that's a great point, man. They're losing serious money.
And some people have the luxury. I'll just drive to Vegas, or I'll just drive to California. Or I'll just have an Uber. But some people are just losing out altogether and just saying, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna stay home."
Well, yeah, and I mean, for example, and I'm not going to sit here and play the violin for members of the MMA media because this is the job and whatever. But Luke Thomas,
I've seen that.
One of the top 2 people in the entire industry is not going to be there now. And that's saying something. So when he's not going to go because of this, you understand the reach of how it does affect everybody.
But with all that being said, everything in question, everything. Does Jones still win? Does it affect him? Does he when they're hitting his music and he's walking out? Is he thinking in his mind about what's going to happen? Because I mentioned too earlier that I believe the crowd has always liked Jon. Even when he come back against OSP, they cheered him. When he come back against DC, they cheered him. I believe he's getting booed the fuck out of the arena this Saturday because they're going to be mad. They lost ticket. The fans that make that trip are going to be pissed off fans. I believe this will be the first time we see Jon Jones booed out of an arena.
I could see him definitely there's going to be some extra security. I think we're going to see a lot of water bottles and other things thrown at him when he's coming in and out. And whether that's, right or wrong, that's not the point, right? That's just the reaction we're going to see. That's what I think. The UFC is going to probably have to add some security. Now, in his defense, I don't know if you probably know about this. He posted to Instagram, Jon Jones did yesterday, that he was going to be in the lobby of a hotel around 7. I forget what hotel it was, whatever, last night. But he was going down there as himself, willing to sign any autograph, ask any question, and it's an attempt to placate those who are irritated with him. But you got to admit, like he's trying here in a way, and whatever. But I don't know, and I think someone who loves Jon Jones would have shown up to that thing last night. But man, yeah, it's going to be hard. And I tell you what, Gustafsson is never going to have as much crowd support as he's going to have on Saturday.
Oh, for sure. And you know how the fans are. They can be brutal. Like, I seen Jon tweet out, what should I do with my walkout song? And they were like, this is just sending in pictures of steroids, sending in pictures of fucking cheaters, sending in pictures of...
Did you see what Anthony Smith said when he asked about the walkout song?
I did not
He said, yeah, he goes, how about Anthony Smith? He goes, how about you pick I Love the Way You Lie? I mean, that's why I love this sport. You know what I mean? You don't see that shit in football, basketball, baseball, whatever. That's why I love this. Ben Askren, too, he's been taking shots at Jon Jones. You don't see that outside of MMA. And it's one of the things that makes this sport so damn entertaining.
Right before we started, I looked at Twitter real quick at Ariel, and Ariel posted that Alexander Gustafsson a week ago was at like a mansion in Vegas. He said him and his whole team were at like a mansion, and he said now
they were at Badu Jack's. They're the boxer. They were at Badu Jack's house, and because Badu Jack is he's from Sweden and he's friends with that Gustafsson.
And now he's sleeping at a motel parking lot top thing.
Yeah. And if you watched Embedded, he was in that helicopter ride to the Grand Canyon and doing all that great stuff, and he's all getting giggly in the helicopter, and then all of a sudden he gets his bomb dropped on him. You know what I mean? You imagine the switch in mindset, and he's still, like I said, hats off to Gus, because despite that, he was like, nope, I'm fighting, I don't care. So we should all just stop and thank him, first of all, because without him doing that, we would have no main event that would be worthy of what we're hoping for.
And I was rewatching the 165 where they fought the first time, and super close, super competitive. It was obviously a split decision, very close, but Jon Jones... obviously, he can improve from that. Every fighter, if you fight somebody in 2013, there's no way it's going to go the exact same in 2018. It's just not. But
no, it's not.
But
it's not.
If Jon can get it done, and I was watching that fight, is why I'm bringing it up. Right after they announced it, Joe Rogan said Jon Jones should move up to heavyweight. If Jones beats Gus, and he doesn't test positive, and he doesn't get stripped, and doesn't get suspended, is a climb to heavyweight next?
I don't think it'll be immediately next. I think he would defend his light heavyweight belt against somebody. I don't know who, but at least once. But I do think eventually, yeah. And as he gets older, the chances that he would go to heavyweight increase. Now, he's mentioned the big fight with Brock Lesnar. I don't want to see Brock Lesnar ever back in the UFC. Ever. I don't care. I think he's a cheater. I've known about Brock Lesnar since I've known about Brock Lesnar about 20 years because I went to a high school that was very close to his for a couple of years. He's from Webster, South Dakota. I went to a high school for a couple of years in South Shore, South Dakota when he was in his prime as a high school wrestler. So I'm very familiar with Brock's career, and I don't want him back in the UFC at all. But I do think eventually, yeah, because let's be honest, the fight game's changed in MMA. People are now looking for money fights, and that would be a money fight. And anything in heavyweight, you imagine Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic? I mean, that alone, I think, would sell, despite the fact that Cormier knocked out Miocic. I think a lot of people would pay to see something like that.
I ultimately think you have to do DC Jon at least one more time.
Yeah. Well, if let's say Gustafsson wins on Saturday, I got a feeling they would have to have a third fight. And it wouldn't wait around like this one has, and it wouldn't wait around like Diaz-McGregor trilogy either. I would not be surprised unless Gustafsson somehow knocked him out right away in the first round or something, or the second round, and it was so decisive and convincing there was no doubt. I think they would have a trilogy fight. I think the next fight would be a rematch within 6 months.
Does Jon have the longest reach in MMA history? 84.5 inches. I'm pretty sure.
No, I'd imagine Stefan Struve probably does.
I think it's the same. I'm pretty sure they have the...
That's crazy. I believe you. I'm just saying that's crazy. That's insane to think about that, though.
He's got an 85. I believe Stefan has a half inch on Jon.
Yeah, yeah. And for a frame that Stefan Struve is what, 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot.
The skyscraper.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. And Gus has a very long reach himself. Now I don't know exactly what it is. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
79.
79?
Yeah.
Well, we all saw though he could close the distance, and I'm also one of those people. I don't believe the first fight matters at all between Gustafsson and Jones. I think too much time has passed, and Gustafsson has improved so much more. And I'll tell you, that's why I think Gustafsson is going to win on Saturday. I really do. I think Gustafsson, despite the fact that he has not fought in however many, he hasn't fought since 2017, May of 2017 or March 2017, I can't remember now. And Jones coming off layoff, I have more faith in what Gustafsson did during that layoff and how hard he worked than I have faith in what Jon Jones has done during that layoff.
Yeah.
I think Gustafsson has improved a lot more. He's taken a lot more seriously. He's a new father. He's recently married. I think he's really buckled down. And if I were Jon Jones, I'd be worried.
I believe we're going to witness history on multiple occasions. If in my predictions, Amanda Nunes defeats Cyborg by...
Really?
I believe Amanda's going to beat Cyborg. I'm more confident. I believe we're going to have two upsets. I believe Gus is going to beat John, and I believe Amanda's going to beat Cyborg. But
Really?
But I'm way more confident with Gus than I am Amanda, if that makes sense. Like,
it makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. I think you're dead on in that there's a better chance of Gus beating Jones than there is of Nunes beating Cyborg.
Yeah, but Amanda, she's crisp and sharp, and she's got good boxing and good jiu-jitsu. I believe a lot of people I've seen on Twitter just, Cyborg's going to manhandle her. You're not going to see that.
No, and if there's anybody who can defeat Cyborg right now, it's Amanda Nunes. Let's be honest. I mean, that's it. If there's anybody who can do it, it's Amanda Nunes. So it's interesting just for that alone, right? Because there's been never, Holly Holm, in my opinion, is the only person to ever truly test Cyborg. And I said that last time that I think I was on your show. That's it. She's only been tested once before, really. Gina Carano, I don't believe, was a true test for Cyborg. I don't. And it was so many years ago. Cyborg has improved so much. So I think it's Nunes or nobody.
I could be just having a complete brain fart right now, but didn't Cyborg fight Miesha Tate or no?
No, not that I know of. You're gonna make me look it up now. Watch.
I could
don't.
be wrong. I could have sworn.
I know she did. Not to my knowledge off the top of my head, but again, I could be wrong too. My buddy Craig Allen, he's the stat guy. But now I'm gonna go look this up
I'm pretty sure not. But I could have swore I seen some highlight of Miesha. But Misha's a 135, so I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Cyborg's never been able to make 135, and I'm just pulling up SureDoc here. I'm 99.9% sure that fight never happened, and if it did, it was never in the UFC.
Yeah, so
I know that for a fact. But no, she's never fought her. No, Miesha Tate's never fought.
If Cyborg wins, here's my prediction. If Cyborg does win, I think Cyborg goes to Bellator if she wins, because what the fuck is left? You've beat everybody. You could wait for Kat Zingano. On the card, you got Kat Zingano versus Megan Anderson, which is a good fight.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Megan Anderson, Kat Zingano. The winner of that fight will get the next featherweight title shot if Cyborg wins.
You don't think Cyborg would even consider Bellator? Because Bellator's got
not at this point.
She's got some Julia Budd and some legit 145ers. UFC doesn't have any 145ers. The season that
they will soon. They're doing. They got that show coming up.
But the season that they just had with the 145ers, all of them dropped to 135. The winner who won, that Macy girl who just won, she is making her debut at 135. They had all your women featherweights on the show are dropping to bantamweight.
I think a lot of the moving forward, a lot of those fighters who do that are going to move back and forth between the two divisions. I don't know. I don't think that. I think I'm not saying going to Bellator is out of the question for Cyborg in the future. I don't think that at all. I think, however, that there are still some challenges for her, and I think either the winner of Anderson Zingano is going to be next to face Cyborg if Cyborg gets past Nunes, or if it's a really close fight and say Cyborg loses to Nunes, there'll be a rematch between the two just because Cyborg's never lost. Like in that capacity in UFC or any big promotion like that. So I think there's at least 2 or 3 more fights under the UFC banner for Cyborg before she would consider going to another promotion. But you never know, because sometimes it sounds like she's going to be there forever, and other times it's like, oh, this could be my last fight here. This could be my second last fight here. You know what I mean?
And
so it's so hard to tell. And plus, I don't know the status of her current contract with the UFC. I don't know what multi-fight deal she signed or how many fights she has left on that contract, and that's really the linchpin to this whole topic.
Yeah, her and Scott Coker have always had a good relationship, and I seen what made me bring this up was I seen Cyborg actually talking in an interview a couple of months ago where she said that I might end up in Bellator. She said, I believe Bellator has more natural 145ers. Like, Holly Holm is not a natural 145. Ronda Rousey is not a natural. She's not there, but she's not a natural 145. Amanda Nunes is not a natural 145. She's fighting smaller women. So in her mind, anyway, I believe she was like, okay, I'll go somewhere where I'm fighting legit featherweights.
Yeah, I still think the UFC is too big of an organization, too much of the draw, and it's the NFL of MMA, right? And so I don't think that Cyborg. I'm not saying ultimately she won't, but I think she's got a few more fights in the UFC.
So one of the biggest travesties, I guess you could say, of the card is how the fuck do you have BJ Penn opening up the prelims? I don't care if BJ Penn's 80 years old. He needs to be on the main card.
I'm split between this because I don't think BJ Penn should be fighting at all anymore. However, I understand why he took this fight, because Ryan Hall isn't someone who's going to bang BJ Penn up. He's not going to bruise him up. He's not going to cut him up with fists. He's not going to knock him out. He's not going to give him a concussion. This is going to be a grappling war unless BJ Penn decides to keep it on his feet and just use his striking skills to try to neutralize Hall's ground game. Now, if Hall is going to be at top of his game, if Hall has any chance, it has to go to the mat. But I don't think BJ Penn should be on this card at all, because I think he should retire. Now, if you're going to put him on this card, I don't have a problem putting him on the prelims, because he hasn't been doing well for so long. He's taken some serious beatings. You know what I mean? So I don't think he's the draw that he once was. And so, with a card with this much talent on it, I can't hate on the UFC for putting him on the prelims.
We've seen BJ knocked out. We've seen BJ TKO'd. We've seen BJ decisioned, but we've never seen BJ Penn submitted. He's never been submitted in the UFC. And personally, if BJ Penn gets submitted by Ryan Hall, I might just cry.
I think I was last time we were talking. I mentioned, if you fight long enough, we both agreed it's going to happen. If you fight, I don't care if you're undefeated your whole career. If you fight long enough, you're going to lose eventually. Anderson Silva lost. Jose Aldo really paid a price. Against Conor McGregor, and then twice against Max Holloway. So I think, and obviously BJ Penn's lost before, but we're talking about being submitted. So I think the longer BJ Penn fights, there's always a chance we will see him get submitted. And hey, Ryan Hall is one talented guy on the ground. I don't know who else would be more qualified right now to do that of that level. He's not going to, BJ Penn's not going to get a top 10 contender, right? So I think in terms of the fights they could make for BJ Penn, he could be in trouble with a guy like Ryan Hall. He just maybe, pushed too far past his prime.
I'm not too big or familiar on Ryan Hall. I know a little bit. I don't know too much. I know he's a great jiu-jitsu practitioner. But BJ Penn, he got his black belt in 3 years, I think. The youngest anybody's ever got a black belt. You think back to when BJ Penn fought Jens Pulver, when he fought Diego Sanchez. BJ Penn is, without a doubt, one of the greatest of all time. In his prime.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And he was a pretzel on the ground. You could put him in horrible positions, and he was flexible in ways that we've never seen another fighter be bent and then not broken. You're right. He was unstoppable. And in the big picture, BJ Penn is one of the greatest fighters of all time. I don't care what's happened lately. He is one of the greatest fighters in UFC history. Period. Just period. He is. And he was and in a lot of ways, he was a pioneer in a lot of ways too.
Oh, yeah. My first season of The Ultimate Fighter, when I started watching UFC, was Season 5 of The Ultimate Fighter, BJ Penn versus Jens Pulver. That was when I got into fighting. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people did. And also, BJ Penn was a guy, he wasn't big. He was a lower weight class guy. He was a smaller, when he fought, he's fighting lightweight, welterweight guys, whatever. He was a smaller guy, and he gave a lot of other people out there who were watching MMA the inspiration to say, hey, I may not be a huge light heavyweight or a middleweight or a heavyweight sized person, but I can go fight just like BJ Penn can, and I'm just a regular sized guy. BJ Penn was never ripped. He was never cut guy who lifted weights. just a regular dude who applied himself with a whole bunch of talent and a ton of dedication.
Yeah, definitely one of the GOATs. Top 10 to 15 for sure. But and this just
I would say top 10. I would say top 10 easy.
Yeah, this just popped into my head too. And it kind of correlates with Jones and steroids thing. Let's say Jones is on steroids right now. Let's say that he's microdosing and he's juiced up, and 5 minutes before he goes out, he takes another shot. I know this is very far-fetched, but let's just say that right before he goes to walk out, he takes more. There has been cases in the UFC and other places where the guy on steroids gets beat. Like I remember when BJ Penn fought Sean Shark, and Sean Shark tested positive, but he didn't test positive in that fight, I believe. But fighting, back when in the Wild West days, 01, 02, 03, there was some guys that were juiced to the gills and still managed to lose, still lost to somebody.
Oh, I'm sure there were. See, the thing is, like I was saying about when we were talking about whether Jon Jones has been clean his entire career, it's one of those things we will never know. You know what I mean? There's a lot of shady things going on in the first years of MMA. Now, I don't know if that carried over to when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers took over in the early 2000s. I've been watching the UFC since I was 13, 14 years old in the early 90s. Darren too. And, we saw it from Shamrock, Hoist Gracie, Tank Abbott, all those guys all the way through. And it was unregulated. Let's be honest. There was a guy with one boxing glove, There was a lot of crazy shit going on. So it's
used to weigh 220 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Vitor Belfort, he came in at 19 years old when we first saw him in the octagon, and he was a phenom. And then we've seen his physique change. He's had a lot of therapeutic use exemptions for TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, over the years. He hasn't been fighting in America. He's been fighting in his home country, Brazil, and a lot of people believe that's why. So there's all types of shady shit that going on in the history of the sport. But right now, all we can do is base things on what we've seen, on what we know, on what evidence is presented to us, right? And at the end of the day, you and I do this because we love it, right? All we want to do is see a fight. That's all I want. I want these guys to fight. And obviously, I don't want someone to be hopped up on PEDs, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But until we have more concrete evidence that Jones has done something wrong again, like this is a new offense, I think we just got to take it at face value and just roll with it, man.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a very weird situation. We've never really, we've had a lot of firsts this year. We've never had a trade when we got Ben for, Mighty Mouse.
That wasn't really a trade, though. That was just a trade in people saying it was a trade. It wasn't really a trade. It was both promotions agreeing to release. One agreed to release Ben Askren from his contract, and UFC released Demetrius Johnson. They did not trade. They just agreed to both do it.
Yeah, and if
they didn't have to then go over to the promotion that they went to.
That might not have happened without Matt Hume either. He's a big part of one, and of course Demetrius.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Coach and all that, but ultimately, I want to just, like you said, I want to see fight. I want to see if Jones can beat Gus or if Gus can beat Jones. Here's my prediction, bottom line, before we get off here. Gus wins, and Jones gets popped about 3 weeks later and gets and gets...
I knew you were going to say that, man. I knew you were going to say that.
And I predict, and this is going to sound fucking insane, I don't think we'll ever see Jon Jones fight in the UFC again. I think this will be Jon Jones' last UFC fight. I think he loses, gets popped, gets a 4-year suspension, retires.
I don't think that's insane at all. I don't think that would be far-fetched. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think anything's crazy at this point. Really, how could we, after all we've seen happen in the sport? Nurmagomedov just solidified his legacy by beating someone who he hates. And what was the first thing he did? Leaped over the cage into the crowd to get Danis, and then a brawl broke out. And this is someone who's usually pretty reserved, Nurmagomedov. So in this sport, I don't think we could think anything is too far-fetched. This is a crazy sport, and I don't think that's an insane prediction at all. I personally think Gustafson's going to win. I don't think we're going to see the end of Jon Jones for a few years, but that's just me. And I do think Cyborg is going to make Nunez wish he never stepped up to 145. I really do. And that's just my opinion. I'm no expert. This is just how I feel.
Yeah, a lot of media don't like to make predictions for some reason. I make predictions every fight. I always go with my gut feeling sometimes, and of course, you factor in what you know, their styles, their heart, their chin, their cardio, all that. But I just got a feeling Amanda's going to win, and I wholeheartedly believe Gus will win.
Well, and no one can fault you for that opinion, because there's a lot of people who share your opinion, man. And this press conference that's starting in, let's see, 20 minutes here, it should be interesting. This press conference starting in a couple minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. It should be interesting because there's a lot. This is kind of the first time we're going to see Jones and Gustafsson together since this news broke. They're going to be in the same room together. And obviously it's just going to, from what I know anyways, it's just going to be Nunes, Cyborg, Jones, and Gustafsson. But then afterwards, there's going to be more media stuff. They're going to try to have like a regular media kind of media day, I guess, that they weren't going to originally have. I heard Megan Anderson saying that she was going to be available between 4 and 5 Pacific to go down and speak to the media in LA. And I know there's going to be other fights. Michael Chiesa was also expressing some interest in doing things like that. So they're going to have an actual, kind of media thing after the press conference as well. But this press conference, I'm very interested to see what Jones and Gustafsson say to each other now that they're sitting in the same room since this has happened.
And
because
the questions are going to be, the media is going to ask the same question 150 times.
Yeah, and I said we should have started a pool on how late Jones is going to be, or somebody else. Watch. Out of those 4, the press conference will start at 5, and someone's going to pull a Conor McGregor. One of these 4 fighters is going to, or if not more, is going to pull a Conor McGregor. And we're going to be sitting here waiting till 5:30, 6 o'clock, and for one of these people to show up even. That's the way it always goes.
Well, we do have a press conference to catch. I'm sure we will be waiting because we all know how that goes. But I appreciate
yeah. Well, I tell you what, you can enter. Keep yourself busy with Joe Rogan in the meantime.
Yes, Joe Rogan is live right now, but I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you coming on, and we will definitely do more. And I was actually going to ask you now that we'll just do it live right here. You said you have you're a writer, right? Like you make articles and you have a newspaper, or
yeah.
Just like your own public or your own personal articles and shit.
Yeah, well, I started out as a writer. When I started out to 2013, I covered baseball, basketball, football, and MMA, and college football, college basketball, whatever. And I've worked for a ton of different websites throughout my time. And I was really lucky early on. I had some articles on USA Today. I had a couple of articles about the basketball, about the Toronto Raptors on ESPN. I had some stuff on. I had a lot of content on Fox Sports. But then I just switched over to MMA. Writing runs in my family. My father's an old school newspaper guy. My grandfather's a newspaper guy. My mother's a published writer. And so it runs in my family. I never went to school for any of this stuff. After just being like, I said to myself, my life was not taking the best direction when I was a younger guy. And when I was 33, I was like, I had my accident, and a little bit about that. And I had my accident. I was sitting around feeling sorry for myself, man, straight up. I'm not going to bullshit you. And I thought, why not try just writing? I was such a sports fan. I've been a sports fan since I was able to walk. I literally learned how to read on the 1987 Topps baseball card set. My grandfather taught me how to read off baseball cards. So, that's just how I've been. So I started writing, covered a bunch of sports, and 2 years ago, I switched to just MMA. I love it. It's year-round. I've always had a passion for this stuff. And, I've primarily been a writer. This is crazy. I didn't do a single YouTube show or even my radio show until June. I never did a single interview until this past June on any sport, ever. I never did audio, video, and nothing. I just didn't want to. I was only a writer. Currently, I am fortunate enough to contribute content to the Fight Network, which is a website out of Canada. It's out of Toronto, but they also have a TV network in Canada that's really big. They show UFC fights on it. And it's the Fight Network here is, like I said, it's a big place for Canadian fight fans. So I write for them. I write for Craig Allen's website. And I was with Fansided MMA for a couple of years. I recently resigned from Fansided MMA. Just wanted to take a new direction. Great people over at Fansided, not saying anything against them. But I just want to take a new direction. And currently I'm actually looking for a couple of other places I want to write. As you know, our radio show was just come to an end last week. So looking for new places to write. And I just had an article come out today. And the title of the article, it's on Craig Allen's website on fightnightpicks.ca, is it's entitled Down with the King, Alexander Gustafsson attempting to defeat MMA's most hated figure. And that just came out about 10 minutes before we got on air here. So please check that out at Above the Fold Tie Twitter or at fightnightpicks.ca or Ty Okeefe on Facebook.
Yeah, definitely. But what I was gonna say was I used to be a writer a little bit, not like your kind of writer, but I've won a few here and there, stories, old stories, and I would love to write you something and send it to you, to maybe if not publish it, just post it for yourself and post. You know what I mean? Just to see what you think of my writing and get you.
Well, I tell you what, man. I'll tell you what. I don't have a site, like I don't have my own website, so I don't publish anything. I'm lucky enough to have other sites that publish my work. But I tell you what, man. You write something, you send it to me. I'll be more than happy to read it. And if you want to work on it, you want to keep writing, you let me know. I will find a place for you to publish it. I love your work, and I will. I'll go to the wall for you, man. I will go to the wall for you, Hank. So anytime.
That's why I knew I'd ask. If nothing else, I just want to get your opinion on my writing skills, if nothing else.
Well, I tell you, I'll be happy to give it, and I'm honored you'd actually care what I'd say. So, hey, man, if you want my opinion, anytime, brother, I got your back.
Oh, definitely, and I appreciate the support with you. Tough times going on right now with my family, as all my followers and people know. You're one of the ones that are very positive, and you personally have reached out and said if you ever need anything or if you ever feel some kind of way, just hit me up, and I appreciate that.
Well, I tell you what, you're one of the only people who's got my personal phone number in the entire industry. I think about 2 people do, and you're one of them. So anytime you need something, man, you call me 24 hours a day. I'm an insomniac, too. I never sleep. I literally sleep 2 hours a day if I'm lucky. So you call me anytime you need anything, man. I'm here for you.
All right, it's been a great episode, man. I appreciate it. Merry late Christmas.
Yeah, and Happy New Year and Merry late Christmas to you, too, man. We'll be talking soon. It seems like you and I start talking every day now on social media and stuff, so it's great. Definitely. It's great, and that's the way it's going to stay, brother.
Yes, I appreciate it so much, and that's what I love most about the MMA community is you can find really close friends in just something as simple as watching people fight.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I worked football, baseball, basketball before switching just to MMA, and I never found any of that until I came to just MMA. Period. Never. It's not like that in the other sports.
But we got a press conference to wait around for, so I'll let you off here for now, though.
I appreciate it, man. It's been a pleasure as always, and we're going to have you on our show. We're going to get you on all 5 rounds here pretty quick in the next week or 2, I promise. Yeah, come on with me. We'll figure out a way to do it. We'll get around the technical glitches, and we'll all pretend we know what we're doing, and figure out this computer mess, and we'll go from there, man.
Definitely. If I have to create one of those accounts that we talked about, I'll create one. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, man. Hit me up anytime, and it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
Take care.
You too, brother.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Smoke Break MMA. Subscribe, like. Be careful, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this UFC event coming up. Gustafsson is going to win. Amanda Nunes is going to win. Watch it.